Okay, welcome everyone. This is Washington State Building Code Council Executive Committee for Friday, March 6, 2026. Can we please take roll?
Annette, if you're running, you're muted.
Yes, you're right. Sorry about that. Todd Baber there.
I am here.
Jay Arnold.
Just popped on.
Okay. Jay Arnold.
Here.
There you go. Ben O'Mara.
Happy Friday.
Yay. Roger Haringa.
I am here.
And Tom Handy. I do not see, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And then we will ask for any other anyone from the public like to be recognized. I see Patrick.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Welcome, Patrick. Elizabeth.
This is Elizabeth Torsky with Cascade Natural Gas. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Tim.
Tim Atterbury, Associated General Contractors of Washington.
Perfect. Thanks, Tim. Okay, moving on, and we will review and approve the agenda. Can you hear a motion to approve the agenda in front of us?
So moved. Second.
Okay, Jay and then Ben. Anything you'd like to change or add? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Item 3 is to review and approve minutes from December 5th. As we scroll, can we hear a motion to approve as shown?
So moved. Second.
Okay, we'll stick with Jay and Ben on that one also. Thank you, Roger. Any edits? Okay, seeing no hands, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? December 5th minutes are approved. Okay, we'll jump right into our first item, is the IBC tag membership. Dustin, please take it away.
Alrighty. So one of our provisions in statute allows that if tag members are absent for more than 3 meetings and the groups are suffering lack of quorum due to those absences, that their places can be designated as ex officio status. What that would mean for the individuals who haven't been attending is that they are still going to be invited to the meeting, can still participate in the meeting should they show up, but they'll need to establish good membership attendance to be designated non-officio, ex officio status. So posted for this meeting today, I have an attendance log back to the beginning of December when we kind of started working with the IBC tag on the legislative mandate topics for temporary emergency shelters and dwelling unit size. And so we've had a lot of discussion within those meetings, and I think we've made some progress, but at almost all these meetings, we have had no quorum going. So I have 4 seats highlighted in particular on this attendance log showing, non-attendance across the whole board. I'm not looking at the alternate seats attendance because, as long as we have the alternate in attendance and we can coordinate that, it doesn't impact our ability to do business. But our representatives for affordable housing, general contractor, developer, manufacturer, supplier, and fire protection engineer are all the primary members, and the alternate members are not in attendance for these stretch of meetings. And the ask I'm asking for here today is for this committee to designate these 4 primary slots as ex officio. And what that would do for the committee is the ex officio slots would no longer count towards quorum counting. and then we could establish a quorum with the members who are attending and actually conduct some business and get the legislative mandate tasks back before the BFRW committee and up to the council so that we can get these codified, ideally in time with publication for the 2024 code with ICC. And so that is what we're here today for this particular agenda item.
Okay, thanks, Dustin. And just so everyone I think knows, this IBC tag it did most of its work last year in the first part of the 3-year cycle, and we pulled it back and asked it to do a couple other tasks on the legislative mandate. So it's been a good tag. They've been showing up almost weekly on these last couple tasks, especially in November, December. And then this will really help with just let's get to the finish line, and then we're going to regroup and establish new tags anyway for the next cycle. So I guess the question I would put out here is, perhaps we should be including um, Michael Shaw's position there also.
I mean, it's part of that one, but because of the attendance log, he was there at the beginning of this selection, and I don't have a reason not to include him, but I hadn't included him for today, but not opposed.
Okay.
The only thing I would characterize is that the ones that have been highlighted, we've had some specific communications go out from SBCC staff to them to let them know, hey, we're bringing this to the executive committee. If these representatives for these seats had letters of recommendation, we sent out notification to those organizations providing those recommendations to let them know that we were going to be making this movement here today. And the only person who responded back was our fire protection engineer. They've had some responsibility shift, and the time and date that we were working on Thursdays in the afternoon. And that one wasn't working for them. And then we sent out some polling to identify a better time for the group as it consists. And the new time, which was Thursday in the mornings, still didn't align with their schedule. So I did get a response from Andy Leonto letting me know that it's not working with his schedule. But I have seen him at some of our other meetings, and I'm sure that he would be interested in continuing. Just right now, the schedule's not working out for him.
Okay, so what I'm hearing there is that perhaps it's not appropriate to put
Michael Shaw.
Okay.
I haven't given him the same
treatment
benefit
as the other. Understood.
Yeah, right.
Okay. That's fair. Okay, let's open this up to anyone on the council first. Any discussion? Go ahead, Roger.
I think given that it is I guess so all of these members have been contacted, you said, Dustin?
Correct.
I think it's appropriate for us to do that at this point so that we can get over the finish line. In letting them know, however, I would reiterate that their participation is still highly encouraged. That the only change would be in the final vote to approve or disapprove. But any of their input would still be requested and honored, and like anybody, I mean, it's open public, so anybody can on a tag, anybody can really participate as much as they want. But I would just remind them that this doesn't mean you can't participate. Just in the messaging. So
That's
the notices that went out did contain that, hey, you'll still get the meeting invites. Be welcome to come back at any time. You just need to get participation going, and then we can include them officially to get their vote back in place.
right. And many of them have been valuable participants, especially in the first round. So of course, we appreciate everyone's contributions, however they can contribute. Okay. Thank you, Roger. Patrick, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm just looking at RCW 1927-033, and I don't think it doesn't quite say what Dustin is saying. It says that once they're designated ex officio until a reappointment is made. So I don't know if once you designate them as ex officio, if they start attending again, that they can just automatically be considered a full voting member. I think you'd have to reappoint them if that's
Yeah.
how you want to go about it, just to clarify.
That was kind of the intent, was to get the notice out, and then if they get participation back, bring it back to either the council or this committee to reinstate them fully. So if I led to believe that we were just going to reinstate them once they come back, that's not my intent.
No,
Well,
but I think that's my understanding also. Anyone disagree?
no, and in fact, Patrick, my whole comment is if they can make a meeting, have them come and participate. They just can't vote.
But
You know,
I think what Patrick's correctly saying is that we could always reestablish their
sure.
membership through the executive committee or their full council, reappoint them if necessary. But
Sure. Okay.
okay, this is important. We need to be functional in these meetings. So I'm not seeing any other hands. With that, I think we can take them all at once. So I guess could we please hear a motion to well, what is the action on here, Dustin?
I would be requesting a motion to designate the members in these slots as ex officio members until such time as the attendance is reestablished and we bring it back to this meeting or to the council or the executive committee to reaffirm their full membership.
Okay, I think that's right. How about we make it simpler? How about we say, could we hear a motion to designate these four positions as ex officio? Is that okay?
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you, Jay.
I'll second.
Okay, Roger, second. Okay, any other deliberation? Go ahead, Ben.
It's yeah, just a question as we'll be talking about the bylaws subsequently after this item. Just is this a item that requires council action, or is it something that this committee can take action on and move forward?
Either. So this committee is allowed to take
Yes.
action on this.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Jay.
And just a clarification, when you say this position, you're talking filled positions in those slots.
Correct.
Right. So I want to make sure that we're getting Shweta Sinha in there as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, I see the distinction. Okay. Because the rest are vacant, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Good clarification. Okay. With that, let's do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. With that vote, then that action is, those positions are ex officio. Thank you all. Okay. Thank you for the organization, Dustin, on that one. The next item on the agenda then would be to talk about our bylaws, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, I'll let you introduce this, and then we have Patrick online if you'd like to call him.
Yep. So a while back, not a while back, but before our last council meeting, we received a letter from Patrick representing BIAW with some co-signatories requesting that the SBCC take a look at some suggested bylaws modifications. Those are posted today for this meeting. We have the initial letter sent by Patrick. We have the bylaws and the modifications proposed posted today. And we also have a letter from some of our SBCC stakeholders signing on in support of consideration of bylaws changes. So let me get open, I guess, first the letter, or has the committee read the letter posted for today? Okay, I'm seeing some affirmation. So I'm going to pull up the bylaws changes, and then Patrick, since you are the prime author, I suspect, I would maybe appreciate if you might just run us through these as a courtesy, kind of explaining what the intent here is. I noticed in the letter it says better compliance with OPMA and just better clarity across the bylaws. So if you could run us through that, I'd be happy to share and drive this mechanism for you.
Dustin, if I can interject, and Patrick, yes, but I don't know that we need to go line by line through this. I think let's have a high level discussion first of what our intent is as a council. and because the document's posted, so I think it may be, if I may interject, it might maybe Patrick just explain your motivation here, and then we can talk about how we've been thinking about this as a council and what we would bring forward to the council and schedule this year.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. Thank you to the committee and the chair for taking time to consider this topic. This recommendation is something that's been on my mind for several months and I've been actively working on this year. The sort of origin stems from an issue that came up last year around the OPMA public notice and special meetings. As I looked into that, I saw some other areas where I think there could be improvements. So areas where over time, SBCC operations and processes have grown out of step with the bylaws, better aligning the bylaws with statute and parliamentary procedure. And then while I was in there, I saw some general grammatical editorial cleanup that I thought I'd suggest for you. And then updating the addition of Robert's rules used. That's kind of the high sort of overall look. My goal was to provide suggestions that improve current processes to provide better notice for stakeholders and the public and ensure that current practices are aligned with the bylaws without making overly drastic or changes or overhauling the current bylaws. Also, I didn't want to gum up the process with burdensome restrictions and maintain the ability for the SBCC to operate smoothly. I think there's areas where perhaps you may want to take a deeper look and see if larger changes are appropriate, like the purpose and the function of the work group on economic impact, or what I'm suggesting, the economic committee. But there are key provisions like the public notice that I strongly encourage the SBCC to adopt. BAW and our members have a vested interest in the SBCC, and obviously my work is centered around that, but these recommendations are not meant to benefit one stakeholder group or another over another, but are meant to benefit all stakeholders and members of the public. In that spirit, I've worked to reach out to other stakeholder groups, hear their feedback, and I think there's broad support for these changes. There's some different sort of ideas that some people have about some more changes or things you can add on to this. I've spent 2 years now almost attending every single SBCC meeting, including participating as a volunteer on multiple tags. In my experience, making it easier for stakeholders and the public to identify the purpose and intent and content of a meeting makes it more likely for them to engage and provide helpful feedback to the SBCC, particularly when it comes to special meetings like tag meetings. So that's sort of my goal with these changes, and I'm happy to discuss any specifics that you'd like.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. I think that's a good summary, and that helps a lot. And I see a couple other members on here that have signed on, including Ken. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit more broadly. So thank you for this. It is, of course, unsolicited, but it is absolutely on topic because, as you know, this is something that the council's been, working both with the legislature and internally. And I think we can use this opportunity as executive committee to talk a little bit about our intentions. I can state that we've had multiple conversations about this over the last week, including Dustin and I sat down with Derek and just kind of walk through how to best bring some of this forward to the council. It's always been my kind of opinion that we would intend, after we get through the adoption of this 3-year cycle this year, that then this would be a key topic in, it's not really called an interim, but in the interim for us between code cycles, before we would fully initiate and agree upon the 2027 cycle. But it also then would correlate with the interim for the legislature because, as everyone knows, Representative Rammel helped lead as one of our ex officios this year. Some of the questions and things that might be advantageous to ask the legislature for help in cleaning up some of the RCW. And so I'll just give my opinion. I hope that the council will then take this on later this year after adoption, but have a very comprehensive structured approach all the way from, working with the legislature on what potentially could happen and be coordinated in a bill next year, through the policies and procedures which we adopt in WAC, all the way down to the bylaws, which we have here, which are more flexible. But my opinion is that these are good changes. I don't think anything structurally is critical right now or would be necessary to get through this cycle, although it might be helpful or may be convenient. But I think that'd be my advice. But I'll defer to the rest of the executive committee first, and then of course we can take any other public comment on it.
And may I just clarify that the executive committee is not empowered to make changes to the bylaws. There has to be the council, has to be a 2/3 vote to do the changes there. Um, and so we're here to just discuss what we have here before us and maybe make a recommendation to the council from this committee, but not looking to adopt these bylaws today. I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, committee, any opinions? We'll start with Ben.
Yeah, I guess as a overall statement, like I think a lot of the proposed changes would be helpful and just cleaning up and clarifying intent and wording and things like that. So appreciate that someone's taking the time to go through that and propose those. And overall, I think that there's some discussion on some more of the substantive items, but in general, I feel that most of these are make sense to me. And yeah, I guess I would be, just interested in what staff feel like would be possible in terms of meeting some of these requirements for notification and timing and document management and things like that, for some of these proposed items.
So, as far as the timing for getting agendas out and everything in accordance with the OPMA, I feel that staff is meeting that mark right now. The one thing that might be different in here is the documents being uploaded, like on the same day of the meeting. So, the OPMA requires that the agendas be put out minimum of 24 hours before the start of the meeting. We're doing that. Updates to the agendas can occur after that 24-hour window passes. And as far as documents, yes, we're trying to get documents up as soon as possible. But, for example, the last single exit multiplex housing tag meeting, I got updated documents from some of our proponents and at the day of. And so, trying to get those uploaded and noticed in a way that's makes it clear that they are updated documents is one thing we've kind of changed. Instead of just replacing the document with a new document, we're putting up duplicate documents that are trying to show that we do have an update to them. But I think that staff can accomplish the goals that are set forth here in these bylaw changes. But I think it's the document handling is the big change to what is actually happening. I think we are meeting the minimum OPMA requirements, which isn't necessarily my goal to be a minimum compliance. I would like to have enough time to go for people to digest these documents before they come before the different committees in the council. And so, on the bylaws right now, there's something that talks about there needs to be 2 weeks. That's the cutoff for staff to get documents to post for a meeting. And ever since I've been with the council, that hasn't been in practice. And so, if it's not 2 weeks, we've been bringing documents as soon as they're relevant, to the meeting postings. And so it is a challenge to get these documents, extended out. If sometimes it's, proponents that I don't get them from. A lot of times it's staff that hasn't had the time to prep them appropriately in the time frames to get them posted. So it is possible to get them up there, but I just worry that the business might slow down a little bit if we are making sure we get documents out there in the gold standard, which would be like a week of in front. So I think that what we have here in the proposition works for what we can do, and it wouldn't be overly burdensome.
Okay. Thank you, Dustin. Let's go to Jay first and then to Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with your comments, Todd, and with Ben's comments that I appreciate the work, Patrick, that you've done here. This is Certainly along the lines of what we would want to aspire to get materials out there and the public notified um, ahead of time. And I think part of what needs to happen here is the discussion, as Todd suggested, after the 2024 code cycle, as we're preparing for the 2027 code cycle, of what it is that was possible. The mid-course correction that we made with the change of schedule was an important one, but it's one I'd like to avoid when we suddenly realized, just given all the work that had to happen with staff and the analyses where um, we were not on track for 2025 adoption of the codes and change midstream. I'd like to spend some time this fall really thinking about, okay, what's the 2027 cycle look like and how do we adopt the schedule and the process such that we're being realistic with it and having appropriate timing and buffers and things to do it right. And so I think the time to talk about these changes would be this fall, and look forward to getting into the details of saying, okay, with staff, what does everything that Patrick has suggested here mean so we can have a realistic schedule. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Patrick.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little more just about the OPMA stuff, since that came up. And I want to be clear, what the SBCC is doing technically meets the minimum requirements of the OPMA. But I think, and generally my goal as sort of the past couple of years has just been, let's just focus on meeting the minimum, and then we can focus on best practice after that. But this is one area where the minimum wasn't really enough, and there were some issues with that. With how the SBCC currently interprets the OPMA is if you make an event page on your website and post an agenda to that, you consider that constituting notice of a special meeting. The problem is you have a lot of events, you add events frequently, you can change events frequently, and unless someone, religiously checks your website and tracks all of those changes, it's very easy for them to miss a meeting or not realize a meeting is happening. And then on top of that, I looked at a lot of other local governments and how they do meeting notices, and they typically will do a meeting notice and then have an agenda attached to that. So the distinction would be they would kind of have a page or a letter or a memo kind of describing what the meeting is, what the purpose of it is, so you know the context, and then you have the agenda. Whereas some, and I think I list a couple examples in the document, some of the agendas you put out really lack context. And as a stakeholder or a member of the public, it's like, yeah, you know it's on the agenda, but you don't really know what that means. Are you taking final action on code proposal? Are you delete it. It's so wide and varied that it's really hard to understand sometimes if this is a meeting that somebody needs to show up to, what they need to bring, what kind of feedback they need to give back to you. And generally you've been pretty good about sending out email notices, but there was an issue last year where it wasn't sent out, and I missed a meeting because I didn't see it on the calendar a week ahead of time, and then it got added. So you have an ability, and I'm not proposing changing that. That would require an OPM change where, within 24 hours, you can call a special meeting and you have, pretty broad authority as to what you can do at that special meeting. Yeah, I'm not changing that authority. I'm not changing your ability to do that. I'm just saying, if you're going to do that, give, at least 24 hours ahead of time, send out that email, because has much higher visibility. And then if you're relying on the agendas to be your notice, provide a little more detail so that people can know what the context of the meeting is, what they need to bring for you. So, one example would be for the residential tag, we tried to differentiate between when we were just having a first hearing on proposals versus when we were intending to take final action. So when you're just hearing, somebody might know, okay, I don't need to have all the written out changes. I don't need to have everything ready. I just need to give my general thoughts. But when we're taking final action, then everybody knows, oh, if I have an amendment I want proposed, if I have a major section I want changed, I need to get that to them, or I need to come with that language in mind. And then when it comes to the documents, as a tag member, I experienced that, right, where people are sending things out sometimes during the meeting. And my goal was to retain sort of the flexibility for tags to be fluid in that process. But that just before the meeting where you intend to take final action, that you're getting substantial changes in and posted at least 24 hours before. And that's a little bit of a change, but I think it's a change that will generally result in better code. I found other stakeholders tend to agree that when you're making substantial changes on the fly, that doesn't necessarily result in the best work. So that's a little more context behind that change. Thank you.
Yeah, that's helpful, Patrick. Good input. Thank you. Roger?
Yeah, I will, I guess a few things. Patrick, like everybody else, I appreciate it. I know as I jumped on the council a few years ago, trying to read through and understand the process was important. I know whenever we went through this last time, I saw a date, I don't know if February 24th, or February of 24 when we went through. Um, it felt like I, I had always hoped that there would be a more comprehensive review of everything. So I really appreciate the edits that you've gone through, the suggestions that you've made. If we were, if folks were thinking that we were not meeting the OPMA, I think more immediately looking at some of these might be appropriate, but I haven't heard that that is folks' opinion. So a more comprehensive look, and in fact, interpretations of the OPMA, I think would be important in considering whether we would make changes or not. So I think that that has to be part of the conversation. I appreciate the ability to keep the tags, flexibility for the tags. Dustin's comment about the last single exit meeting, all of the tag members are volunteers. So I'm a volunteer on a few different committees in different organizations, and I know I have a tendency to think, oh shoot, I have a meeting tomorrow and I was supposed to get a document ready. So I get it ready at the last minute, and that's going to happen when you have volunteer people doing the work. And so I think there has to be a conversation around when that 24 hours is critical. And just off the top of my head, Patrick, I wouldn't disagree if we're gonna, even at the tag level, if we're gonna do the final approval of a list of 25 code change proposals, that goes out 24 hours in advance. In general, I would think, yes, that makes sense. How that's stated in the bylaws, I would want to go through and take a more thorough look at it. So I'm also in favor of, I appreciate the work. As a council, we put this on our plates for this fall as we, as Jay said, start really planning for the 2027 code cycle. And address it at that point. And Todd, if there are things that we would suggest get changed at the legislature level, at the RCW level, maybe there's something to consider there too. I don't know, but I think that having a broader, more inclusive look at all of those potential questions this fall would be make a whole lot more sense to me. So.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Roger. And as we come into the as we land this plane for 2024 codes, I think we are moving beyond the tags very soon, and that glide path is a lot more defined. And I think this is a good conversation to have right now to make sure we are doing continuous improvement as we land this plane, but also we get into our next takeoff. So let's go to I recognize Tom first as joining. Do you have a comment, Tom? And then we'll get to a couple more public comments.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, I'm late, and I must have gone to the wrong gate or something since we have the plane accurate thing going. Anyway, what my comment was, and I just only really heard, about 5 minutes of this. I'm wondering, you know, t okay, let me back up. To me, the RCWs are the major governing uh, document, let's just say. The bylaws are like number two in line. Um, you know, I know that bylaws are kind of the, the way people need to operate their organization, but they're also something that you probably don't want to just change every time something new comes up. Because it leads to a lot of, I think, instability. And then I think that one of the things that we need to also consider, with some of this stuff is it really a bylaw issue or is it just a policy issue? Policies are a lot easier to change. They can be a lot more flexible than the bylaws should be, in my opinion, anyway. So I just want to throw that out there, as we go forward at some point, with this, determining if these are some of them are policy issues that should reside there, or if they really need to change our governing documents here. So.
Okay, thank you, Tom. We'll go to Elizabeth next, please.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Elizabeth Torsky with Cascade Natural Gas. As a frequent attendee of many SBCC meetings, I just want to echo some of what Patrick's statements were. It is really important to have good notice and good visibility of when meetings are happening, and I do think it is important that this body retains the ability to call special meetings, especially when this body has the responsibility to respond to legislation and special issues. So I think that's great. But I would echo there has been times, and I think the meeting Patrick mentioned, I think a similar meeting I missed as well. And ever since then, I've had a to do on my Outlook list that every day I go check the SBCC calendar to make sure nothing's been added that I don't have on my calendar already. So having a more official notice as opposed to just a website calendar would give me a great deal of peace of mind that I know that there's a more firm communication as far as meetings. And then, yeah, having a little more clarity on agendas would be a cherry on top. I would also say I didn't have enough time to get confirmation from my leadership in order to sign on to Patrick's letter, but since Patrick submitted it, my leadership is very supportive of these changes. We're a regulated utility and we're very supportive of open communication and transparency. And I think these changes are just a support of that, just a continued effort to be transparent, to allow folks to participate, and just to keep everything communicated at a level where you can get that appropriate public participation and you don't have folks not knowing whether or not their proposal is going to be talked about, whether they need to attend, what they need to provide, or people coming to a meeting and having something discussed that they would have liked to have digested mentally a little bit longer before trying to ponder on the fly. So I support these changes and I hope the council considers them. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think those are good comments. Let's go to Chell, please.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I read through the bylaw suggestions and Patrick proposed, and I agree with almost all of them. It's a good cleanup of how we work together. So thanks, Patrick. I think some of the restrictions for the council in terms of getting things posted are good, and there's a recent law that um, has some requirements about what the council does. I think that we're 24 hours in advance for the tags. I think that will impede progress. The tags are meant to consider things over and over again. And I think, posting something, requiring something to be posted within 24 hours or more than 24 hours would slow down the process. Tags need to be fluid, and actually, things in tag meetings can be suggested on the fly. So if you are not disallowing tags to make wording changes on the fly, then why would you penalize something for being written down and posted? I don't understand how that would be realistic or helpful. So if someone can, in a tag meeting, suggest one word change from one thing to another, why couldn't they write it down and send it in within 24 hours and have that be posted? I guess I don't understand the difference. I think the intent here is to make the big changes, have those be posted 24 hours in advance. But that's not what the bylaws suggestion says, and that's not how it would be implemented. So I think I disagree with that one. Tags also have no final action. They might finish up their work as a tag, but they do not change the codes in any way. That's the council that does that. Also, many tag meetings, we've had the tag decide that they can't act on a proposal because of the limited time for documents posted, and said, all right, we'll consider this next time. So they have that ability for the tags to consider something, but I don't think taking away the ability to consider something that was posted within 24 hours is a good or rational thing to do. We do a lot of great volunteer work here, and I think nearly all of it is well done. So I hear people pointing out, cases where a meeting was missed here or there. I think we should acknowledge that there's a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of it is done very well. And then lastly, all the decisions made at the tag level and committee level can be modified later in the process. So there's no such thing really as a final decision in those regarding the code itself. There are some final decisions there regarding interpretations or other things. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jill. We'll go to Tim and then Ken, please.
Now, Tim with AGC, I just want to associate myself with Patrick and Elizabeth's comments. I wouldn't add or subtract if the things they said. They did a great job. Well said, folks.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for always showing up. And Ken, please.
Hi, Ken Brulette, Fire Code Consultant LLC today. I just was wondering if you could just go down to the tag number 7, if you could just show that. This is one thing that I made a suggestion to, and it's very difficult. When you get down to number 7. With regards to quorums and meetings, I would be hoping that the council could come up with a better way when you don't have a quorum to just call the meeting after a certain amount of time, to give the time back to the people that were going to show up, so then they don't have to put on their presentation for 1, 2, 3 hours and discuss it, and then turn around and have to have another meeting since there wasn't enough people to actually vote on it. And also then the report that's shown in number 7, that has to get generated, and that's done by staff. And if they didn't have to do that, this is one thing off of their plate. So I would be hoping that it's very frustrating when there's not a quorum, and I'm hoping that it doesn't happen too much. But when it does, everybody goes around and still has the meeting. And I would love to get the time back to those volunteers that are on there, since and the people that we might bring in to testify on behalf. You can just say, hey, here's your time back. We're going to have to reschedule, and hopefully we'll get a quorum the next time. So other than that, I support everything that Patrick put in here. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for that, Ken. Okay, does anyone else want to kind of be heard here? I see a hand there, Patrick.
Yeah, is it okay if I follow up on a few things?
Of course, of course.
Yeah, so kind of just give an overview in like the hierarchy of how the sort of the policies, procedures, rules, statutes apply and talk about how hard that is to change. So at the top, you've got the statute. Statute's very hard to change. It has the strongest enforcement. Once it's in there, it's very hard to get out, and you have to do it. You've got WAC, your official policies and procedures that are adopted through rulemaking. Granted, that's totally within your power to change, but obviously you're familiar now with how sort of cumbersome the rulemaking process can be. So that's hard to change as well. And it also it's not as strong as statute, but it's still very legally enforceable. Bylaws are the easiest to change. They are technically legally enforceable, but it's a little bit different than the WAC or the statute. And then, yes, you always have your unofficial policies and procedures. The things that I'm suggesting today are problems that I've seen occur where the unofficial policies and procedures maybe were not followed, not executed, or they're not matching the current bylaws. So it's areas where that unofficial policies and procedures aren't quite cutting it. And I think changing the bylaws is the first step that the council has to demonstrate to stakeholders their willingness to change and address issues without going to the step of doing rulemaking for the WAC or requesting statute. That once that changes, it's not quite permanent, but it's very, that's an entire process going through the legislature. When it comes to the 24 hours notice, my intention was to have that really only apply at final action. My thought process was final action can depend a little bit depending on what the body is. So for council, that might be the final vote on whether or not to adopt. But my intent was if you're voting to approve or disapprove an amendment, that language should be given out. The substantial language should be given out 24 hours in advance. My intent was not to prevent minor amendments being made on the fly. Sometimes you catch a little editorial change. Sometimes there's a sentence that comes in that's different. But I've seen myself and other stakeholders have issues where there's large sections of code writing that are happening during the same meeting at which the item is approved instead of bringing that back. Once again, that might be something you might not need to address right now, addressing it ahead of the next tag. And I'm happy to work on, language improvements to these suggestions on anything. I would say if your intent is to do a more comprehensive review later this year, that's fine. I think there's a lot of this that can wait for that. The one thing that I would say that I would really hope that the council adopts sooner rather than later is the changes around special meetings and notice. That's been a big stressor for stakeholders. And with how many special meetings you guys hold and that you're going to hold between now and the fall or next year, the WUI code tag is probably going to start meeting this summer. You have the single exit multiplex housing tags, a lot of work. So it would be really nice to get that kind of solidified as, we're going to send out a gov delivery notice for all special meetings guaranteed. That would really address a lot of concerns for stakeholders. So thank you.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you, Patrick. To my understanding, the gov delivery notices are going out in accordance with what you're asking for us, that 24-hour, all the tag meetings, according to what's in our bylaws and statute now, are run in accordance with the OPMA, and we are getting those gov delivery notices out. We're not just relying on the website, although I would agree that that might be considered minimally compliant. But we send out the gov delivery to try to get the notice out so you don't have to go back and research our website every day. You yourself have told me that you get those notices, and hearing that, maybe one got missed, and I'm not going to say 100% of them have gone out, but I would say that, 95 to 99% of our meetings have had gov deliveries go out well in advance of 24 hours. And, we do try to get them out there right. We do sometimes get them out right at that 24-hour mark, but we get them out there. And, I can recall one meeting over the last 2 years that didn't observe that. And so are we asking for more than what's going on? Because I feel like we are doing that. And I'm not saying that, it's a best practice to wait for 24 hours, but I feel like this council staff is getting the meetings out there 24 hours in advance. You're getting an agenda that could have a little bit more context to it so that you can know what to bring. But I do feel that staff is meeting that mark that you're asking for in these bylaw changes. And so is there more than just one or two meetings over the last couple of years that have not had Gov Delivery go out on them with an agenda attached?
Right now, it's in your unofficial policies and procedures, and I've said it before, and I agree. 95% of the time, 99% of the time, you're doing that. I'm trying to address a problem before it gets really, really bad.
Okay.
If you guys hold a special meeting and I miss it because I don't check your website and you didn't send out a Gov delivery notice, and if your defense is going to be, well, we're following the minimum OPMA, that's going to be a problem for us. And if that's a problem that we have to address, we're going to look at some stronger changes. So this doing a bylaws is just a way for the council to say, we hear that's a concern. We understand there's been maybe one or two missteps, so we're going to codify that in our bylaws as something that staff needs to do every time. Not just something we try to do this every time, we need to do this every time. And it's just a small step up from the OPMA. I'm trying to address this before it becomes a really big problem.
Okay. Okay, I think this is all pretty clear. Appreciate everyone's input and for the initiative on this. I think we kind of stand with the intent to move more into comprehensive plan, if you want to call it that, in the fall, because there are some bigger questions that I think some of us have had as we've all learned what has developed over the years, and there are many good ideas out there. So this is going to be a planning process in the fall, in coordination, and we have the commitment from certain members of the legislature to help work on this, and they're eager to do that. So we also need to get them out of session in the next week or so that they can get some breathing room and can refocus on this when appropriate. So. Okay, message received. Thank you very much. We will absolutely do our best as intended as we come into the final adoption in particular. I will say that I think most of those meetings we've been strategic about trying to get those scheduled, even where we anticipate special meetings are going to be needed, because there are going to be some times that we're going to have to navigate very closely with filings and so forth and trigger special meetings. But in general, know that it is the intent to put those on the calendar early and remove them if we rather err on that side than have something surprise us. So okay, if there's nothing else, then let's close that agenda item with no action today. That was the last item, official item. I'll open it up for any other business, and I'll give a couple updates, but I'll look for anybody else to give other business first. Okay, seeing none. I just was going to give a quick update. If you followed the legislative committee meeting yesterday, we talked about two things. One was the kid home bill passed. The House is most expected to go to the governor's desk for signature. I was asked if I could follow up on the budget. I had a chance to quickly brief Senator Wilson. He's tracking it, knows that it's in the Senate budget, not in the House, and I had a chance to brief one of our ex officio, Representative Rammel, and there was assurance that this is the process, that if it's their Senate bill and it passed both houses, that it's anticipated it'll show up in both budgets and be reconciled. So that's the feedback I can give on that. Then that's the specific appropriation for that bill that was in the Senate version. And then the second one was we did talk about single exit in the legislative committee because the question that I know I had was about legislative intent. Again, as a quick summary there, Roger gave an update yesterday in legislative committee. The council at the last full council meeting voted 10-1 to ask the TAG to consider type 3 construction type over 6 stories. The TAG responded that they recommend no action, to not take any additional action on construction type. There was discussion about if not in the appendix, then should it be considered in some time frame in the base code in Chapter 5. I think I just want to raise it here because, and maybe I'm just have certain visibility that where this concerns me, it is my opinion that it should be considered, but I also know that there is support with some legislators that that was the legislative intent. So I look for just a quick little discussion here from the executive committee on what could be brought forward. My idea would be honor the recommendation from the TAG. They were very clear on that. And that will come forward in 2 weeks at the full council meeting. So I think what I'm asking as chair, as we set the agenda in 2 weeks, should this be on the agenda or not? Should this be on BRFW agenda or not? To develop any code language that could be considered by the whole council. That would be my idea. That is still honoring the recommendation from the TAG, but asking the question, perhaps in the base code, is there something the council could take up in 2 weeks to file into CR 102? And if so, my proposal would be we work with the groups, the stakeholder groups this week and bring something forward to BRFW to refine language that would just be brought forward to the whole council. Anyone want to kind of respond to that proposal? I want to be very transparent if we do this. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just to clarify, you're talking about bringing recommendations to modify the base code?
What I heard in the TAG was there was not desire by the technical advisory group to modify the appendix. I mean, of course, that is a potential action too, but I'm a little more cautious about that, recommending that to the council to, amend the recommendation. Of course, that's possible. There was more of a question of is there is a specific section or two in the base code that could be amended and I would say modernized with probably an exception that could include this condition where these additional measures have been taken. I'm not trying to be secretive there. What it says right now, it was a section, specifically IBC section 510.5. I was trying not to get too deep in the weeds here, but it really is more a historical section that is about, those, in my understanding, developed before, active systems and kind of more a unit compartment approach that would be consistent with this appendix. So I can see some potential language that I'm happy to bring forward. I would propose we bring it to the BRFW and have that as the public forum and make sure everyone's well aware and not caught off guard in that discussion. Let's go with Tom first and then Jay.
Yeah, just a statement. It seemed like, during the discussion yesterday that, or even maybe, well, yesterday mostly, that the tag was open to that idea, to change the base code, but, not necessarily change the appendix. So I think it'd probably be a good move to look at it at BFW. I'm not going to be there though. I'm going to be traveling, so, but I would support it.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Go ahead, Jay.
Question, since I'm not familiar with the technical details. When you're talking about the change in the base code, would that be making a change that would apply more broadly and not just to the appendix?
That's correct, because and that was my concern when it was raised in the ad hoc. I maybe took a position that I believed it was maybe more appropriate in the limited scope of the appendix, and there were others that disagreed, or they might have just disagreed at all, and that was simply, that it would have to be dealt with there, right? So it has to be done carefully, but I can see a path.
My particular concern is that generally we have a requirement that code proposals have to be recommended by the tag, and we have a process for code proposals. And this seems to be, while the idea has merits, going beyond what the original tag had recommended. And the special tag didn't recommend it for buildings, but thought, okay, what I'm hearing is it's a good idea overall, but it was not something that the IBC tag ever considered as a code proposal. Is that correct? So if so, I think the process of having something brand new come out of a committee that hasn't gone through the base tag is an issue, both because we're super late in the process, and two, I think we have an RCW requirement that says that any code proposal not approved by the tag can't move forward. And I'd have to look up that particular reference.
And Jay, on that note, before Roger comments, yes, that is correct. And that was a lengthy discussion we had this week to try to prepare, the interpretation of that. Is it external petitions that it's referring to, in the normal 3-year cycle? So we can absolutely get into that RCW, and now we look very closely again at that as we have over the last year since that was implemented or adopted. I'm sorry. In my opinion, that doesn't specifically apply here because it's code development that can happen, in my opinion, under legislative mandate. And what we're saying is, can we develop perhaps code that we'd move forward in the BRFW next week towards the full council for CR 102 public rulemaking. So let's go to Roger first.
I would have to get into, Todd, the procedural that you're talking about. I haven't thought about it or looked at it. I just wanted to offer a different opinion than Tom's summary. Being the chair of the single exit multiplex housing, I felt like there was certainly people of that tag were very open to the idea. However, what I had understood or took away is that would go through that during the 2027 code cycle as a bigger code change for the whole, for not just for single exit, but not that we would do that now, that it would happen at the next code cycle. So
I think that's a fair statement also. Some would see it as that, for whether it's a procedural opinion or it's it's a valid kind of concern, or it's simply a kind of a strategy to not address it now. I'm not pugning anyone on that. It's just that's I think that is a fair statement, Roger. Okay, Patrick.
Yes, thank you. I'll say this, the discussion, this wasn't something really as much as my radar until the recent discussion about it, and it's piqued my interest. But I agree with Roger that my impression, at least of the tag meeting, was that the idea was that this was a change that would be more appropriate for the 2027 cycle. So my question for the chair is just trying to understand what the big push is to get this included in the 2024 code this cycle.
Yeah, because I'll be very clear. I'm conflicted because it's a difference it's a difference of opinion in legislative intent. The tag has very clearly established that they did not believe it was in the legislative intent. Maybe I'm on an island in my understanding that it was the legislative intent to get to 6 stories with the most cost effective, which doesn't specifically state that is one construction type, but that was kind of my assumption coming in, that would be a consideration. So again, it's hard to establish legislative intent after the fact. Our ex officio and the bill sponsor are aware. We'll see if they want to weigh in next week when they catch a breath after cutoff today. But they are aware, and we'll see if we can, I guess what I'm asking here is at least to engage anyone who wants to engage on this and what that technical language might look like. I think there is a nice opportunity for a forum next week in the BRFW. And I don't know that the BRFW has to weigh in and make a recommendation. I just think that's a technical public opportunity to look at what that would look like. The thing that more broadly I think I've been challenged with as we've gone through this process, I think it's been very successful. But we have these mechanisms, these vehicles called technical advisory groups, and in some of the bills that they specifically say we shall create essentially an ad hoc technical advisory group, or one of the existing technical advisory groups should essentially develop code. And the question I've had over the last year now has been, is that really what those tags were established in RCW to do, to be code development, or are they meant to be stakeholder engagement and review of petitions? We never, we depend a lot on volunteers to write code. We don't have specific, dedicated non-partisan, even though we're not a partisan, body, to develop, I should say, like, more objectively develop code. So that's a tough one, and that weighs on me too with this kit home bill coming up. Somebody has to develop code, and our tags the best qualified, our council members, our staff, all the above. It's a question. Patrick, do you have a follow up, or is your hand still up?
Yeah, so if I could kind of combine what I took from the meeting and what you're saying here. So your thought is that it was the legislative intent to allow purely stick frame construction up to 6 stories, including the first story.
I'm gonna not stick frame. That
Stick frame.
it could be inclusive, but no means am I making a wood only argument here. Um, I think type 3 is the category, is the construction type to consider the most, that is somewhat agnostic to material type and system, right? Could be steel, could be wood, could be probably masonry for that matter. Um, so just to clarify that, but
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
you're right though. People drift immediately to wood, so there are some that probably think this is making a wood argument. Go ahead, Ken.
So Todd, if I was in your shoes, this is going to the CR 102, the appendix, right? If it goes, because it's already been approved
Correct.
without that number 21. So why?
Wait, I'm sorry, Ken. No, the council hasn't taken action yet. I think we're
Okay.
anticipating in 2 weeks from today we will take
Okay.
action.
So they take action, approve it without the number 21. Why can't you bring this up as a public comment, and then you're not having an issue with, like what Jay was bringing up of being a new code change proposal? It's a public comment. And the reason I bring that up is because Dirk was completely clear that any other item within the RCW can be brought up during public comment. It doesn't have to be specifically based on a code change proposal, but yours would be. But you could bring in a proposed code change to the IBC for that section. And if you wanted to duplicate a section or create a new one, you could. So I'm not too sure if you've even thought about using the public comment process to address your proposed changes again.
Yeah, first of all, I don't want to claim them as mine, but thank you, Ken. You are one very closely, tracking this, and we thank you for that. And on this public comment process, of course, we want to make sure if we do that, if it's a substantive change, then that starts to trigger other 20-day notices, and we've built that all into the schedule. But for the sake of being transparent here, I do think if we're aware of this, we should get it out on the table and consider it as where we can in committee and council, so that the CR 102 could reflect that, because of the opinion CR 102 is the intent of what we're going into rulemaking. So.
Okay, so now I'm going to be a little combative with you. What you just said previously, not right now, is that you don't think the tag's decision should be accepted. You don't think they should be doing code writing, and that the BAFRW or the council should be making the final decisions. which they should be. But you kind of discounted, I believe, in your statement the amount of work that's done by the tag and the people that are there. That you just want to disregard what they said and let's have another meeting at the next level up and discuss it again.
Yeah. I appreciate the comment. I trust, I hope people don't think that's the case. Being, in fact, I think we're all very collectively very proud of what the TAG has done. And very specifically, if you remember, I was the one arguing to have a code writer as a specific position on that TAG. So I think that TAG is, we can hold up as a very strong pilot case of how we would do that. But if you look at that without a couple key code writers that are in that in that group, we would have been much more challenged, right? So
No,
it's
I,
it's
no,
it's
I
something
agree.
I've
It
been
was
thinking about a lot lately, to how we develop code, because even with the small elevator code, well, who's going to actually write that? So that's the kind of thing we have to really get in front of collectively.
okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I hope I'm being helpful here. So you're saying you think that this fits the original intent of the single exit legislation, but the tag said they didn't think it should be in the appendix. So it would need to be in the main code. So either the IBC tag or the BFRW committee would need to develop that base code change, but that it fits the scope of the legislation for the single exit. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll be careful because it's going to start sounding like I'm obviously advocating and very strongly for overwriting what the tag is presented. I think the tag recommendation is very clear. I think that's most likely where this lands. But it has to come forward to the council for action, and there's still a question of whether or not the full legislative intent was captured. I think there's a strong argument that's been made that the tag believes it has, and the original base code allows for 6 stories with multiple construction types, or the more higher performance construction types, such as type 1, type 4 ABC, for example. So we can get very much in the weeds quickly on this one, but it is about a legislative intent interpretation. So go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, Todd, as the chair of the the single exit um, tag, I remember very early on in the process looking at the exact RCWs for those two particular items. And the multiplex housing, it is the legislative intent is very clear because it is item 1 of the RCW. The single exit, however, there is no legislative intent written. You look back at the final bill, uh, it can be implied, but I have there is nothing on the record in the exact RCW that I saw that suggested that was part of the legislative intent. So um, that's just I'm struggling to looking back where were we as a committee supposed to find this legislative intent? I don't know where it is. So I guess that's my point is whereas on the one hand, it was very clear because it was in the RCW, it was included in the RCW. In the for the multiplex housing, for the single exit, it was not. It just said do single exit 6 stories above grade plane. So, and I believe that's what we did.
Yep. Okay. Well, I don't want to keep dwelling on this if others don't. So where it stands right now is the question is, um, in the I'm going to say in the two largest cities. I learned recently, this is kind of a hit to the egos of Spokane. Tacoma recently overtook Spokane as the second largest city in the state. So in the two largest cities in the state, it will be allowed to go to 6 stories in this typology, and then nowhere else in the state unless they do local adoption. And local adoption of adding that would be very hard now. That is something that is you have to do very carefully and have to be very sophisticated in order to do. So that's why I'm raising the question because, you know, in two of the largest cities where the markets are probably higher and can support those, you know, those two construction types where it's allowed, it's the, you know, that's I am very specifically asking for for those other jurisdictions. So. Okay, well, I don't think we need to settle anything here. I just wanted to be very transparent about my thoughts. We'll see if anyone else weighs in over the week and including the legislature, and we can leave it there. Thank you for, I didn't mean for that to be that long of a discussion in other business. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, we will adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.